Okay, I'm gonna be walking through how to do the hair and the mane of the unicorn. So what I've done first is I use some stitch markers to mark out where my unicorn horn will be sitting on the front of the head, just so I know as I'm getting ready to put the hair in about where that's gonna be. So you're gonna be working in the same hook that you built the head in. So I've got my 7 hook here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start right inside the ears here. I'm going to start in this stitch. I'm just going to slip my hook in and weave my yarn through. I'm going to leave a long tail because I'm going to be using this to tie off later. For these loop stitches, I'm going to be doing them in a slip stitch format. So I'm going to go into my stitch here. I'm going to yarn over and pull all the way through, okay? Now you want to figure out about how long you want your loops. I think that's a little long for the front of my head, so I'm going to shorten it just a bit. I don't quite want it covering the eyes, but it can get kind of close here. Okay, so that's about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of a loop. I'm going to continue doing that all the way across the head. So I'm just going to go straight into my next stitch. I'm going to yarn over and pull all the way through. Okay, and you can tell that I am working right behind these stitches here where I've got it marked out for my horn. That way I'm not interfering with where that's going to go. And I'm going to keep working all the way across this row. Okay, so as I'm finishing the last stitch of this first row here, I'm going to go ahead and start working back up the back of the head. So I'm going to go into my next stitch and I'm going to work one whole row backwards, actually skipping a row. Okay, so I'm going to be working in this row here, and then we'll come back up and finish the hair in the middle here. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. It's going to just help the cohesiveness of how this hair looks on top of the head once it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and work my stitches here. Again, just doing that slip stitch to get these loops in. And I make sure I go into every stitch. That's going to help the hair look really full on top of the head. Okay, now as I'm getting to the last stitch of this row, I'm going to flip my unicorn back around, and I'm going to work in this row right in between these two. Okay, so I'm going to actually do one more stitch kind of on the edge here, connecting these. That. Okay, so now I'm just going to work in these center stitches here. This can be kind of tricky, so you really want to be patient with it. Okay. I'm even going to kind of go through these last couple stitches here. All right. Now, instead of fastening this off, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to maneuver down kind of through the back of the hair, because I'm going to want to start working the mane going down the back of the neck. Okay, so I'm kind of going to work this way. Okay, and the rest of the mane will be worked down the center of the head, going down the neck, and I'll show. I'm going to go ahead and start marking out where I want my mane to go. I'm going to do this mane going down the back of the head and down to the neck. And I'm gonna do it in 3 rows, really similar to how we did the horse hair on the front of the head and on the top of the head, going in a couple different directions here. So I know that I want this going down to about the first row of the body. That's gonna help keep it connected and look unified. And that's gonna be my first row. So my second row is gonna be just about as centered as it can be, going down the back of the head and the neck. And I just find that it helps to mark it out, at least initially, using these stitch markers. As I go, I'll remove these pins, but it helps to visualize where this mane is gonna go. Okay, so by the end of my mane, it should cover about that section of the head going back down into the neck. And this does look a little off center here, and this is the main reason why I do this, is just to make sure I can see exactly where my stitches need to go. Okay. So that's looking a little better here. These are the areas that I want to cover. I'm going down right into the neck here, okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and get the rest of this mane working here. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove just the first few pins for the row I'm gonna get started in. I can see where I need to get to here. Again, I've kept this yarn connected from the hair on the front of the head. So I'm gonna work going this way. And we're gonna do the same stitch. So this is gonna be a loop slip stitch going down the back of the head here. These loops can be a little longer than the ones in the front. It really can be as long or as short as you want it to be. I like mine a little bit longer going down the back of the head. I think it gives it more of that mane look. So my loops here are going to be closer to about 3 inches in length. Okay, I can see where I'm going here, so I'm going to keep removing these. I'll leave the last couple in place. And you really want to be as central to the middle of the head as possible. These 3 rows are going to be very close together. You don't want them spread out. You don't want them going too wide across the back of the head. You want them really, the 3 stitches touching each other are the rows you're working in. Okay, and a couple more stitches here, so I'm going to remove these last 2 stitch markers. And I have gone ahead and went into that last row of the head, going into the first row of the body here. Okay, and you can see when it's standing up just how far back you want it. But as I'm finishing this row here, I'm now going to turn the body. I'm going to do 1 more stitch at the base of the neck. Okay, and now I'm going to remove my pins and start working up my next row here. Okay. Again, I'm going right along the row I just worked. This really is probably the most complicated part of this pattern. It can take a little bit of practice to get these working. Okay, and you're just going to continue this until you've completed about 3 or 4 rows going down the back of the head. Okay, so as I finish up my mane here, I did about 4 to 5 rows going back and forth just until it was as full as I wanted. Sometimes it depends on the yarn that I use, or where I get started on the head will depend on how many rows that I do, but I did about 4.5 here. And as I'm finishing, I'm getting close to coming back up to where the ear is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and cut a pretty long yarn tail here. And I'm gonna go ahead and just fasten this off. Okay. So now I'm gonna take both my finishing yarn tail and my starting yarn tail, and I'm gonna weave them back through the head and add a couple knots just to hold these in place. So here was my starting yarn tail. Here's my finishing one. I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna loop this through, add in a knot, and I'm just gonna weave this into the head here. Okay. And if I've got enough, I'll add another knot here down at the bottom, and I'll even weave this into the body just to help lock this mane in place here. So I'm at another good spot. I'm gonna go ahead and get another little knot in. Just tying that off here. Great, and just weaving that back through. Okay, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for my yarn tail in the front of the head as well. Okay, so once both of your yarn tails are weaved into the head, the back of your head and the mane should start to look like this. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and get this horn attached here, and then we'll finish with getting the tail done.